the Father is not the Son. The Father is perfect, the Son is perfect, and the difference must be perfect. And therefore, I must be able to be in communion, and it's really hard work, with people who are different to me. And that is part of the richness of life. It expands me, it makes me a bigger person.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Marsh Moyle is an interesting man. He's an Englishman, but he grew up on Malta. He and his wife Tula lived for 17 years in Vienna when the Iron Curtain divided Europe. There they organized book translation and distribution while researching the beliefs, practices, and problems of life under communism. In the post-communist period, they lived in Slovakia for 16 years, establishing publishing houses in 7 countries. They also ran a learning community and held seminars with student groups in Central Europe, Russia, and Ukraine, committed to awakening the imagination, encouraging critical thinking, and fostering a deeper, practical understanding of biblical ideas. Marsh is the author of Rumours of a Better Country, Searching for Trust and Community in a Time of Moral Outrage. In this episode, Marsh and I talk about utopianism, individualism, and the surprising truth that we can only be our true, distinct selves when ourselves are shaped by the people around us. Marsh Moyle, so happy to have you on the Habit Podcast to talk about your book, Rumours of a Better Country, Searching for Trust and Community in a Time of Moral Outrage. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about where this book came from. I mean, your story is an interesting story. You've been spent part of your life in Central Europe. I'd love to hear about some of that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I lived for 34 years in Central Europe. The first 15, 16 years were when Central Europe was largely under communism. The Iron Curtain was still in place, and we were living in Vienna, traveling backwards and forwards and meeting lots and lots of people. The second set of years was when it all crumbled and what emerged out of that, when what we fondly then looked on as freedom was just emerging, and things were quite wild and slowly began to settle down.
Yeah.
That's where the book came from. I was traveling a lot to Ukraine, trying to help people understand concepts of trust and goodness. Uh-huh. And one of the things that I started to realize is that when we talk about evil, it's very concrete. But when we talk about goodness, it tends to be extremely abstract. And trying to communicate abstract concepts just didn't land with anyone. And so we started a thing we called the Cafe Now and Not Yet, where we would lay out a room like a really lovely cafe, and we would give everyone one of the second half of the 10 Commandments, and we would say, imagine what would happen economically, sociologically, and psychologically in your community if everyone just said, we're going to try and obey this one commandment. Huh. And I've done that now hundreds of times, this exhibition, this sort of exercise. And it was quite shocking that what people generated, whether they were Christian or not Christian, was the same thing. Huh. And it was profound. Yeah. And usually at the end of it, because we'd have group sharing after they'd done the sort of 45 minutes of group work, each group would share with all the other groups, and people would say things like, wouldn't we be able to trust one another? And trust in Central Europe is in short supply. I mean, it's becoming in short supply in England, where I'm from. Yeah. What we assumed in those days, in British life, and I think in American life too, was that people tended to trust one another because they had this substructure that we knew there was a moral law and we were going to be more or less committed to it. Yeah. But when we got to Eastern Europe, morality, defined by the communists, is whatever furthers the revolution. So that wasn't really a very good foundation for trusting anyone. Mm-hmm. And with the secret police and all the other things, you could imagine how trust became undermined. And I was walking down a street in Kharkiv many years ago, and I saw a man with a very large bunch of keys. I mean, heavy, heavy bunch of keys.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't think of it, I put it out of my mind. But when my friend got to his house, he opened his briefcase and brought out a bunch of keys, which was just as big as the other guy.
Okay.
And it took him 8 keys to get from the front door up to his apartment because people really didn't trust each other and they had to protect themselves. And then I had a dream some time later. I can't remember the timeline anymore, but where I was in London and people were bringing their keys. Do you know where Trafalgar Square is? The big
Yes. Uh-huh.
Nelson's column right in the center of London.
Yeah.
People were bringing their keys and leaving them there because they didn't need them anymore.
Huh.
And this was a mountain and mountain of keys, tons of metal and locks and all the other stuff. And I began to think, how much energy did it take, to drag all that metal up out of the earth and smelt it and do all the technical stuff to get it to be a key? And how much mental energy did it take to design the whole system, the locks and everything?
Yeah.
What could have happened with all that energy and all that resources? I mean, we got to the moon. I don't know if they've got locks on the spaceship. We got to the moon in spite of, where could we have gone if all of that energy had gone into more productive, fruitful things?
Wow. I'd never thought about the possibility of maybe turning keys into plowshares.
Yeah, well, that's right. So the book is really, it goes through the commandments from about halfway in and unpacks in a kind of a deeper way. A breakthrough came to me when I was thinking about the Old Testament and what do you do with the law, and I recognized that it was a shadow because the New Testament tells us so. And that then, well, what is a shadow? It's a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to find the 3rd dimension, which you find in the third, a little bit illuminated in the Sermon on the Mount. So the attempt really then became to try to imagine in concrete terms the 3rd dimension of what the law was trying to tell us. What was and it's very relevant to now that power is either raw power, as we're experiencing in our times, or it's mediated by law, or it's mediated by love. And what is this, the loving thing that we as believers should actually participate in? And so that's really what the book is about.
Yeah.
I described the cafe in the first chapter, in one of the first chapters, the early chapters, and it's a great thing to do. It's simple to do, and you can even download the instructions on my website.
Oh, really?
A Better Country, because it's just very simple to do.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
And you can do it over a dinner table, or you can do it over a series of weeks, or you can, it's very flexible.
Yeah. I love it. So, okay, Rumours of a Better Country is what the title of this book. How is the better country you're talking about distinct from a utopia?
I think we have to. I have a glass desk, and the reason I have a glass desk is I want to see my feet on the ground. Because I like to think about magnificent things, the glory of God and so on, but I live in the middle of the tension between dignity and depravity.
Yeah.
And I expect everything human beings do has both dignity and depravity. And the depravity is so much in your face in every newspaper, every news journal, and all the things that we all know. But dignity is rare to see.
Yeah,
it's there, and you can find it. It's all around us, but we don't articulate it because we expect it to be there. And so I think the utopian ideal is very dangerous. I think Lenin was a utopian. Hitler was a utopian for his people. If you weren't his people, tough luck. You're in trouble.
Yeah.
Lenin was a utopian, and he wanted to get everybody to um, have more and better, but he didn't. The process didn't matter, and he
Yeah.
was in a hurry, and building consensus was too arduous, and so anyone who gets in your way gets put out of the way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a dangerous thing. So I'm not trying to build a utopia on Earth now, but I do think that a clearer vision of the good life can help a person and a group of people say this is what we want, and we are going to move towards it as a community.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a romantic. In fact, I have a whole lecture called "Cynicism and Romanticism as Ways We Avoid Reality." And,
Yeah.
they're both dangerous,
Uh-huh.
and we should be integrating ourselves, not sort of siloing ourselves into. And I find the challenge of disagreement useful.
Yeah.
Is that in a Russian friend of mine a couple of years ago said, why do you need Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, which is the name of the other party, whichever party's out of. And I thought about it because in Russia they don't have an opposition. They've got
Yeah.
dead people or people in prison.
Yeah.
And I said, that's how that dialogue is how the ideas emerge. And if
Hmm.
you don't have a loyal opposition who's saying no, it's not right, you either drift to one side, or you just lose any stimulus to rethink your own ideas, and
Yeah.
everything gets very staid and boring, quite honestly, and
Yeah.
not to say dysfunctional.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. The uh, democracy is arranged around the idea of a civil way of disagreeing with one another, not seeking uniformity.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
and the totalizing effect of communism, fascism, all these things. It's this search for conformity ends up being very bloody.
Yeah,
As you,
and I think the communalism of the East and the individualism of the West are problematic, deeply
uh-huh.
problematic, and that the answer that Christians bring to the table is Trinitarianism. So I'm not the left, I'm not the right, I am Trinitarian. That means I believe in the three in one God,
Hmm.
in whose image we are made. So I am in his image as one, but I'm also in his image as three.
Hmm.
And so me and other people in my community are representing the image of God. And if I just fall off the horse on one side or the other, I head into problems. And at the moment, we've got in the West a sort of hyper individualism
Right.
where the only reference point you have to your identity is no longer geography or history, but it's just what you feel.
Hmm.
That's a massive identity problems, anxiety problems, and so on
Yeah.
that come out of disregarding the other,
Mm.
only
Yeah.
finding the locus of yourself in yourself. Well, I
Yeah.
find the locus of myself in you because you're stimulating me in ways that I would, if I was staring at my screen this afternoon, I wouldn't be having these conversations with
Yeah.
you. And
And
so
that's what you mean when you say that we are made in the image of God uh, as three.
yes,
Is that our identity is not individual? It's not self-contained.
yes, right.
Is that a
It's
fair way to
communal.
say it? Is
Yeah,
that
I
an
think
okay?
so. When I go to my local church and I'm part of the body, the deeper my relationships with people, and that really depends on how deep the trust in the community is, the deeper my relationships, the more honest they are, the more fully I become myself because
Hmm.
they draw out of me things I didn't know that were there.
Yeah.
I think it was in one of the books about one of the Inklings who died. He's a brilliant writer. He's the one who,
Charles Williams.
Charles Williams. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when he died, Lewis said, "I won't be able to see him joke with Tolkien."
Yeah.
And that's something completely outside of myself, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I see that all the time in our community. We have a lovely community here of people who trust one another and who are vulnerable with one another and who are helping one another. And it's beautiful work to be in a Trinitarian community, and that's what we need to rediscover. And we've lost it in our, because we are functional individualists, which even though we're trying to be communal, we're trying to be Trinitarian.
What do you think about the term like-mindedness? Is that a term you use?
Well, have this mind in you that was in Christ Jesus. Yeah, but because he had this infinite imagination. I think I think of the Trinity as being the infinite intimate, the three that is one always. And so the depth of that intimacy, it's not unity or uniformity, it's communion. It's not conformity, it's communion. But communion allows for difference. And in my imagination, I've got the artist and the accountant.
Yeah.
One is all in the box, the other is all outside the box. And yet a good Trinitarian community will be, they will be together. They will appreciate one another. They will appreciate the difference as well as the sameness.
Yeah. I asked about like-mindedness. Again, I think that's a useful term as long as we don't think it means conformity, all thinking the same thing. Yeah. And I'm sure
it would be very boring if it was that.
Yeah.
I think of like-minded are people who bring new thoughts to my mind.
That you like.
Or that challenge me. I don't really care. As long as we are trusting one another, and I trust their intention, even if it hurts. I'm all right with that. I prefer not to, but that's
right.
It's a beautiful thing to say. I am bigger because I've met you. I am richer because that's what blessing means. I'm larger because I've met you, and that has to be good. But if we all have the same cliches and the same language and the same way of doing things, it becomes boring. And I don't think God is boring.
Yeah, right.
Just Genesis 1 is an explosion from nothing to everything. And it's a glorious moment. And I love the C.S. Lewis thing that the creation is singing.
I was when you said that, I was thinking about in Magician's Nephew.
Yes, it's
the lion singing the world into existence.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, Now, I wanted to really continue on the same idea. I wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about a sentence that caught my attention from your book. You said modern communities tend to be silos of agreement around promoting and defending specific points of view. And one thing I thought about when I read that is, again, to return to the Inklings. C.S. Lewis talked about the idea that in his parish church, he was around people he didn't agree with, but that was his parish, and there he was. And I don't know what your situation is in your village in the UK, but I know here we drive. I drive past I don't know how many churches to get to church because we manage to be silos of like-mindedness.
Yeah.
I'm not stuck going to church with anybody, and I think it's a sanctifying thing to be stuck in situations. I shouldn't say I think it is it's a sanctifying thing to be singing hymns next to somebody who you may not like, you may not agree with, but here we are.
Yeah, I completely agree that it's hard work. It's hard work. I've just been in the United States, and I drove from Chattanooga down to Atlanta through the back streets because we didn't want to go on the freeway. And every village or town you came to, there would be four churches, kind of almost at the crossroads.
Yeah,
and they'd be First Baptist, Second Baptist, First Pres, whatever they are, And If you don't like the person, you go and you make another one.
Yeah.
And that's so unfruitful because we grow through those conflicts. If we are Christian, we work towards resolution
Yeah.
because God, the Father is not the Son. The Father is perfect, the Son is perfect, and the difference must be perfect.
Yeah.
And therefore, I must be able to be in communion, and it's really hard work, with people who are different to me.
Yeah.
And that is part of the richness of life. It expands me. It makes me a bigger person.
Yeah.
And I, I've been through conflict. I've been through lots of conflict
Yeah.
in my, and people who disagree, and people who disagree across cultures and so on. And I'm richer for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in The Great Divorce, hell is a place where if there's conflict, you just imagine yourself a new
That's right.
house. And so you have this, I don't know if that's centripetal, I don't know the difference between centripetal and centrifugal, but everything spreads out. So hell is huge
Yes.
because
Yeah.
people there's no friction that keeps them,
Yeah.
that makes it hard for them to.
It's huge and it's flat.
Yeah. 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 That's right.
Who wants that? And it's full of fear, and it's full
Yeah.
of a lack of, or empty of trust.
Yeah.
And so when people who don't trust one another don't reveal themselves to each other,
Yeah.
and that creates loneliness.
Yeah. You know the joke about the Coast Guard or the Navy ship that found a man on a deserted island, lived there by himself, and he had built himself a hut and a little bowling alley and a little movie theater for himself out of coconuts or whatever, and a church, and then another church. And they said, what's that church for? He goes, oh, that's the church I used to go to.
Yeah, that's right. And we hollow ourselves out in the process.
Yeah.
And it one of the commandments, you shall not murder. I remember reading. I listed the commandments on the whiteboard in my study, and I was going through them at Easter just to reflect on my own state. And I came to you shall not murder, and I said, well, at least I haven't murdered anyone. And immediately 2 people came into my mind who I was avoiding. And they were functionally dead to me.
They were dead to you, yeah.
And I thought, wow, that the communion of the Holy Spirit, the Father and the Son, isn't dead to itself, it's alive. So if I am in the image of God, I have to be alive to other people.
Wow.
And that means forgiveness, it means honesty, it means humility, and it's hard. And we are supposed to be light to the world in exactly that way, that our trust should be 10 times more the trust in the society we're in. And our relationship should be strong and rich and different, because the infinite imagination of God must have, there must be, I don't know how it works, and I don't want to commit blasphemy, but it's rich.
Yeah.
It's rich.
I don't want to devote all our time to this particular idea, but there's so much to talk about. But remember in Chesterton, I guess this is in Orthodoxy, he talks about the idea that the symbol for Eastern religion is a circle because ultimately all is one. And if I love you because we're all one, in effect, all love is self-love. And he said in Christianity, the symbol is not a circle, but the cross. It's collision. And Christianity recognizes that because we're different, we have to love. And I don't love people because we're all the same. I wouldn't need to because I'm really good at loving myself. I don't need any practice. But because we're inevitably going to be in collision, we have to love one another. Yeah,
that's absolutely right in my understanding. I mean, the Eastern idea of actually the Buddhist idea of difference being problematic means that love really isn't possible, because love requires the acceptance of difference. And I think it's a very profound observation. We have to deal with difference, and the differences can be quite extreme, and we don't have to have complete agreement,
Hmm.
but we have to disagree graciously.
Yeah. And it was in A River Runs Through It that Norman MacLean talks about this father and son who could never understand one another. And he
Hmm.
says, what he learned was that you can love completely without understanding completely. And I think
Yeah,
that's such a helpful way of framing the fact that there are a lot of people I don't understand. I don't understand where they're coming from.
yeah,
And yet I'm not thereby excused from loving them.
and it does seem to me that our definition, our intuitive definition of love, needs to be reworked.
Mm,
It's been so invaded by the romance of Hollywood that the thing
mhm,
that we think of first is a feeling of, and I test this at Libria with students. I ask them, what does love feel like?
mhm,
And usually what I get back is this sort of emotional sort of, and I do believe love is an emotion, or a series of emotions, but it's highly romanticized.
mhm,
And when you're loving your neighbor and it costs you a lot, you're not going to feel warm feelings. You're going to feel tired and afraid and all sorts of other things.
mhm. Yeah.
But those are the feelings of love in that moment because you are moving towards the person, not away from them.
Mm, yeah.
Uh,
Okay, let's talk about the idea of you talk about individualism and more than that, hyper individualism. What do you mean by hyper individualism? I think that'll head us into a
mhm.
discussion of the nature of reality, which is
Well, when I talk to students, I will often say, when you think of your identity, do you first think of I or do you think of we?
mm,
And in the Western world, 99% of people I've talked to and asked the question, and it's thousands now,
mhm.
they will say we, they will say I.
Yeah.
But if I go, say, to South Africa and I make the same question, a lot of automatically the black South Africans will say we.
Mhm.
And I've sat around tables with a mixture of groups when half say I and half say we.
Mm,
So what is that? What are you? And really, it's the communal identity of the East and of farming communities often because they
yeah.
need one another.
Uh-huh.
Um, Village communities. So Eastern Europe very much we centered,
Hmm.
but since the transition to a more Western economy, they've moved towards more individual, which
Mm,
is interesting to see. The individual
yeah.
bank account, the individual vote, one person. We assume it so deeply, but we can't imagine what it was like. And I remember a friend of mine who was Chinese from the Philippines, and I met him for the first time on the island of Malta, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And we were young teenagers, so we were talking about dating rituals. And he said to me, "How will you find a wife?" And I bit early for me then, but I went through the process of dating and all that sort of stuff. And he said, "How do you trust yourself with that
Mm.
decision?" So I said to him, "Well, what do you do?" "Well, I won't do anything. My parents will find me a wife." And then I went completely blank. I said, "How do you trust your parents?" And that communal individual thing was right there on
Yeah.
display. And he ironically, he moved to California and married a woman that he discovered. That was many years later. Um, I think that the individual, if you thought of an individual 25 years ago and you said, "Who are you?" they would have talked about where they were from and their history and their
Mm,
interests. If you talk to some of the modern young people who come to us today, they don't have a place to be from because they've moved around so much.
mhm,
And they don't have, so they don't have a geography and they don't have much of a history because the divorce and the fragmentation and all the rest of it, and living online.
yeah.
And so they will start to talk about how they feel about themselves, and often there'll be a lot of loneliness involved in that. So that's what I call hyper individualism. That loss of a sense of location and a history to be from, and so belonging becomes very important. You often find it in military kids because they've moved around and around and around, and I was that too. So I wrestled with this myself, having a place to be rooted, which is what I love about this place, because I've been here now for a long time, and I know people, and I'm known by people. Whereas the hyper individualist isn't really known by many people, and that knowledge is very often very superficial, and it has to be made up. I mean, there's nothing so lonely as having to generate your own identity, and then wonder if that identity is stable, because it isn't, because you change, and you're supposed to be changing, but you're supposed to be from somewhere and belong somewhere so that you can be corrected, and you have some anchors which stabilize you. But those anchors are now gone for so many people. And that causes enormous internal conflict.
It's hard to give yourself a nickname, isn't it?
You
need other people to give you a nickname.
That's absolutely right. That's a good idea. Yeah.
I've wanted to be my nickname to be the Admiral or something like that, but I can't ever make it stick. Somebody else has to. The Governor, I could do the Governor. That'd be fine. But you say for the hyper individualist, or I guess you say maybe we're talking about just pure individualism. You said their reference points come less from the shared reality of the external world and more from their internal experience.
Yeah.
And this happens not just individual to individual, but sometimes in group to group. This the news becomes a choose your own adventure novel. Because I've got my ideas about how the world works, and therefore two people look at the same news story and think it's a completely different story.
That's and especially
groups or
in the last sort of 5 years. In the last 3 days, we were all still sort of whiplashed from Greenland, and the idea that history doesn't matter, precedent doesn't matter. If I want this, I can take it because I'm big enough. Is exactly what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. Russia wants it; they're going to take it, but they've discovered that they aren't big enough, and we do need one another. And that there is strength in needing one another. I don't find that to be a problem at all. And the idea that I'm a self-made man, to me, is somewhat primitive. And very lonely.
I saw a guy who tried to make a toaster by himself. Like he somehow dug up the ore, learned how to smelt it. Ended up, took him years to make a not very good toaster. But even when I think he still plugged it into a electrical grid that he didn't make. And there's just no way to be an individual, actually.
That's right. But to be a unique person means to be unique in a community of persons. And that is a very much richer concept. So I am unique. There will never be another one like me. But I'm also personal. That means I'm in communion with other persons. And that's a beautiful, that's a Trinitarian idea, which I find much richer, because I'm also in communion at a certain level with the nature around me as well. And that is much richer thing than just a naturalistic frame, which sees me as one amongst many of the atoms that are here. So
So could you sort of summarize what is the foundation of a better community? I mean, I know when you say rumors of a better country, on the one hand, we're talking about a kingdom of God that is not ours to create, and yet we do. I mean, you're connected with L'Abri.
Well, we participate in the creation, and that's a magnificent thing to me. That
Yeah.
God, in the beginning, names the reality. He creates a chaos, and he brings order out of the chaos, takes it to Sabbath, and then he says to Adam, "Now I want you to name some of the reality." So
Mm.
we participate in the creation through our language, through our naming things, through our describing things, through our seeing what things get connected together. And I think that's an extraordinarily generous God to do that, an extraordinary hospitable God to create the whole thing in the first place. And so I learn in Genesis 1 and 2 that God is both hospitable and generous.
Mm.
And that's what we should be. But God trusts God. That is the essence. The Father trusts the Son with the going, and the Son trusts the Father with the resurrection. So trust is the center of the of good community, and everything I can do that builds up trust is for the good, and everything I do that destroys trust is really a definition of what evil looks like, because we are in the image of a communal deity, a God who is three in one, never less than either, and fully one. So what I call it, as I said before, the infinite intimate.
Mm.
And that's what we should be aiming at in our marriages, in our families, in our churches. And if we were to do that, I think people would be hungry for it. They are hungry for it. And trust is absolutely at the center of it all. And the commandments and the use of power is what destroys trust. Commandments are there as a backstop, if you like. But love is the ultimate stop to the thing that is supposed to hold it all together.
Yeah.
And I don't get that from inside myself. I get it from being reconnected to the source of life and love, which is God. Our problem is we have this dark, nagging fear that God actually isn't loving and that he's a bit of a judge and a bully, but he's not. He says, name the animals, whatever you call it, that's what it will be.
Yeah. Can you speak to? So you've been connected with Labrie and other efforts at hospitality and generosity. I'd love to hear you speak to. I'm circling all the way back around to the idea of your dream of piling up the keys, and your question of what could have been freed up, what could have happened if that energy of locking up, locking against our trustlessness, if that energy were released. What is been your experience in your own life of what has happened with the energy that's been freed up in you from having trust and not having to lock everything up?
I think I do live in a world where I have to lock my front door, which is painful.
Yeah.
And I use that when I lock the front door. I remember this is not how it should be. I grieve a little bit. The more you pursue these thoughts of goodness, the more you grieve that you don't get them, which is perhaps the balance in the utopia thing. Deep relationships, interesting people, richness, and I think to live with communion means that when you fall down, there are people to pick you up.
Yeah.
And we do fall down in this world. We need one another. If I look back over the 70 years I've been alive, and 50 years I've been in ministry, then I think of all the times someone's come alongside and picked me up, and all the people I've helped go forward. That's enormous benefit. Enormous benefit.
Yeah.
I am thinking of a situation in Slovakia. We used to have a learning community, and we would have 20 people come and stay with us there for 6 weeks at a time. And the first thing we would do is give them all a key to get in and out, which is a practical necessity. And at the end of several of the things, we had an evaluation. People sat around and said what they thought of the 6 weeks. And many people said on day one, you gave me a key.
Huh.
You told me you trusted me.
Wow.
And it was for us purely a practical necessity. We had no strategic learning moment in mind.
Yeah.
And yet it was a strategic learning moment for them.
Yeah.
Because they were not used to being trusted.
Can you imagine how much energy you would have expended on taking care of people that you couldn't give a key to?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a tragedy that we can't trust each other more.
Yeah.
And so the vision of the good has to be concrete, so we can implement it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Marsh, I want to end with the question I typically end with, and that is, who are the writers who make you want to write?
Wow. I just read Theo of Golden.
Oh, did you? Isn't that lovely?
It's lovely. I wouldn't say it's a great book. It's a great story, and it's got wonderful moral, practical goodness all over it, and it's a rich thing. I've been telling everybody I know about it. So Chaim Potok is a great writer. His book, The Gates of November, which is about Jews in Russia, is a really good retelling of the situation.
I've never even heard of that book.
Many people haven't. They're used to The Chosen, The Promise, and all the other ones. So that's
Asher Lev. I love the Asher Lev books.
Oh yeah, I use him for young Christians who are struggling to be artists, and he gives them a sense of this is the journey you're going to be on, because lots of evangelical Christians don't understand art and think it's wrong because they don't understand it, which is tragic. So his books, there are so many. You had a Leaf.
Leif Enger.
Leif Enger. I love his books.
They're great. Yeah.
And so many.
Yeah. Well, Marsh Moyle, thanks so much. It's been so much fun. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time, and I'm glad it finally happened.
Thank you very much. It's really appreciated. It's really stimulating, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.